I'm Dan Morris, you're watching Most and Dan Bushcraft, and today we're not bushcrafting, we're being attacked by a garage door. Today I have a little task I need to do, so I figured I'd film it anyway, just in case it was helpful to some people. So, behind me here, or what I'm leaning on right now, is a Honda CG125. This one's actually a 2004 model. They don't really change a lot, to be quite honest with you. They're pretty much the same for most of the years, with a few very, very minor differences. This particular one isn't part of my collection. It actually belongs to my nephew. And well, basically it needs new brakes. Now, because it is in fact a motorcycle and only has two wheels and two sets of brakes, I'm going to do one set today, let him run that one in and get it nice and worn so they're working properly, and then change the back set. A wise thing to do when you've got the older braking systems with none of the ABS or any of that business. Obviously the new pads will want to get accustomed with the disc before it will grip properly. So especially for an inexperienced or new rider, and primarily that is what the CG is going to be being used by. It will be your new riders, people riding on CBTs and the like. Understandably, they are a brilliant little four-stroke bike to do that with. And that's exactly what this one is being used for. So hopefully any budding new motorcyclists out there who are considering purchasing such a thing as a Honda CG, you might find this video handy if you want to do a bit of your own maintenance. Changing brake pads on a little bike like this is a very simple job really, or at least in theory. Every 5-minute job's only one stuck or broken nut away from being a 4 or 5 day nightmare. But in the hope that that's not going to happen to us today, it should be a relatively simple deal. First things first, drop this caliper off. So on this particular CG, probably the same as every other one out there, this front brake caliper is held on by two size 12 nuts, or bolts, should I say. Whip those out. Thankfully not horrendously stuck and didn't snap. There we go. Wiggle them bad boys out. Oh, that's what we like to see. Some kind person in the past has used a little bit of anti-seize grease on there. Very good of them. Nice. And then the whole caliper will just lift off the disc. And there we go. And you can see the old pads in there looking a little bit crispy. Now they are not actually particularly bad looking brake pads, as in it does look like they've got a relative amount of life left in them, but I've already sort of bought them now, so there is never a bad time to change them. So before I start trying to undo these, because there's a couple of hex nuts there that are actually holding them all in, and that might be, if there's anywhere that's going to give me some grief, that might be where. So before I do that though, I want to return that piston. Now, what I'm going to do is jam a big screwdriver in there and simply ram that piston backwards. And I'm going to do that because I don't care if I damage these particular pads, they're going in the bin. So it doesn't really matter. If you need to push that piston back using brake pads where you're going to put it back onto your disc, you can either get it in underneath that one there and force it back, or get something like a G-clamp on there that'll do the job for you as well. But I think because these ones are going in the bin and it is quite safe to get stuff down there a little bit greasy, I'm going to blow some WD-40 around the back of them. They're looking a little bit on the rusty side. Getting a little bit of the devil's deodorant on the back of these. So there's two pins there that go through these and hold them in place. And on this particular one, they just look a little bit crispy down the back of there, so I'm spray it full of this stuff. I will have to clean all of that out before I put it back together and put it on the bike, because you really do not want WD-40 or any other lubricant for that matter getting all over your discs and pads. And we take our almost comedy monstrosity screwdriver, force that piston right back into the caliper. If you don't do that, you ain't going to be able to get this back on the brake disc after you put the newbies in it. See how it goes all the way in there. Gets it nice and wide, so you can fit it on when you put your new pads in. Oh. Now the real question is, are these lovely hex nuts going to want to move? Ah. Well, that one was a joy. Lovely. And they say WD-40 isn't the best penetrating oil out there. Well, it might not be the best, but I sprayed it right at the back and it's come all the way up to that thread. So, can't complain. Put those somewhere safe, you're going to need them again. Second pin rescued. And then, there go your old pads. And like I've said, there's still a relative amount of life on these, but there's never a bad time for new brakes. And we've got very uneven wear on them as well, so never a bad time to get rid of those. When you're doing this though, if you're doing this, there's your little anti-vibration spring that lives up the top of there. That just puts a little bit of pressure down on those pads and stops them vibrating and rattling and howling and making all manner of noises. That one's relatively nicely jammed in there. Quite often they will just pop out of their own accord, disappear, you'll forget about it and then wonder why your brakes are making all manner of howling noises. Now then, a bit of the old Mechanics Kleenex. I'm just going to stuff some glue roll down into there to just absorb any WD that might have pooled from where I've sprayed it in it. You do not want this stuff all over your brake discs. And especially your pads. A brake disc can be cleaned very easily. If you throw oil all over your brake disc, you can just clean it with pretty much anything. Spirit. You can get specific brake cleaners. All manner of things. If you get it all over your pads, it soaks in. And it's, well, pretty much impossible to get rid of. So if you've soaked some oil-based product all over your new brake pads, that's the end for them already. You've just killed them. So make sure you don't have any puddles of lubricant in there that are going to drip back onto your new pads. There we go, that's pretty shiny and clean. Here's the new ones. Make sure your hands are clean and free of grease of swell and stuff, because you're going to be handling these, and again, if you go rubbing greasy stuff all over them, you might find braking becomes rather difficult. Now then, in typical Honda fashion, these are an identical matching pair. On a lot of vehicles, particularly a lot of cars, you'll have an inside and an outside one that you need to get right, but these are identical pair of them. They're both exactly the same. Just line them up with your old ones before you jam them in. Yep, perfect match. Excellent. And now a very, very simple process. We just pop them back where they live. In there. Pop him in. So as it fits right down onto that retention spring. Lovely. And we take our 2 pins from earlier, but what I'm going to do is very carefully, I don't want to get much lubricant all over there if I can avoid it, because again, I don't want it dripping onto the pads. But what I'm going to do is on the very end there where it's threaded, I'm just going to gently and carefully apply just a light layer of the anti-seize stuff, and that'll just help me or anyone else in future who has to mess with this, so that we know they won't be stuck. Relocate that back to where it lives. Very gently, just push it back in with your fingers first before you give it any sort of tightness. Make sure you're not cross-threading. Same again. Anything drippy, we'll get it off there. Very light layer of anti-seize on there. Into the thole. And again, just very gently finger tighten. There we go. Make sure you've absolutely not crossed any threads or done any damage. And then we'll just spanner it up. Now, for those of you who haven't got the time for torque settings, take it till it's just stopped and then just give it a little nip over. And that'll be more than enough for this. They don't need to be stupid tight. Like a lot of things on these little bikes, you do not need to go hell for leather with the spanner. You will just strip the thread and ruin it. Particularly with these, where the cast components, and anywhere where you've got steel meeting cast alloy or anything like that, very easy to strip threads. Again, make sure you've very, very carefully cleaned off any of your excess greases, oils, whatever. Cannot overstate the importance of not covering your brake components in lubricant. Right. We'll just carefully prise those back apart down the sliders. Now all that remains is to slide the disc in between those two. Now this is always an annoying... Oh no, that went straight on, easy as pie. There we go, Luke. Easy as you like. That was a little joy. Now these have already got a very light layer of grease on them, so I'm going to give them a quick rub, quick clean. And owing to the fact that they are brake components, I'm going to put just the lightest little layer of the anti-seize on. You can see I'm not overdoing it, it's not absolutely clagged in the stuff. I'm just giving it that light little layer to resist any corrosion from happening, just so in future it doesn't seize all together and become a nightmare. And make sure this is a nice little tip for you folks. Because of the way this works, the very tip of that bolt is going to be exposed right next to the brake disc. Make sure that you haven't got a blob of anything, anti-seize or otherwise oil, sat on the end of that bolt. That will come back to haunt you. Make sure the very end of that's clean. In there, line it back up, and again, as always, wind it in with your fingers first, because if you go hacking at it with a spanner straight away and cross these threads, you've just turned a job that's cost you about £8.50 for brake pads into a heck of a lot more, because you now need to either rethread or replace that bracket. And I'm guessing that anybody watching this video who needs to learn how to change brake pads this simple probably wouldn't know how to rethread that themselves and end up having to buy another one. Again, nice little clean on that. Clean a little bit of it off. In an ideal world, you want it, because they're braking components, like I said, you don't want a great deal of it. You just want it so it's sort of sitting inside the thread spaces. Clean the end of it again so you haven't got a blob on the end of there that's going to plop off onto your disc. Find him, locate him home with your fingers. where did I put my number 12 socket? It can't have ran off too far, it's not a number 10. Ah, there we go. It's your 10 mils that leg it. Bottom one, just pinch up. Top one, doesn't matter what order particularly. Top one, just pinch up. So they both come to a stop. And all I'm going to do is just give it that industry standard torque setting of bring it to a stop and a little less than a quarter turn. And that'll do the job, rock solid. Marvellous. I'm going to be a bit stiff because they're brand spanking new. So what we need to do now, adjust the camera. So we're just going to pump the brake a few times to let all the fluids normalise. Feel it normalise, you feel the pressure build up behind it. So you know that your calipers are back to where they're supposed to be. Now there's no need to bleed the brakes after doing this. We haven't opened anything up, we haven't lost any fluid, we haven't let any air in. There we go, that's now nice and stationary. Check that we've got free movement on it. Yep. And like I say, it will be a little bit stiff because they're brand new. Immediately after doing this, your braking force will be sort of rather reduced at first until those pads get used to being pressed onto that disc. They like to sort of wear in together to the same pattern. There are those people out there who would say that's why you change the disc and the brakes at the same, but they're still not worn together, so it literally makes very little difference. There's no point replacing the disc if it is in fact not worn out. Would a brand new disc bed in with new pads any quicker? In my experience, no, not really, no. They're still not worn onto each other, there's still no knowledge of each other, so it doesn't really make any difference. But that is that job done. The only thing to do with it really now is to go and ride the thing using the brakes, exercising a bit of caution in the knowledge that you won't be stopping as quick for a little while until they grip better. Get them worn in, tickety-boo. It's as good as new. Right then guys, so because this video is primarily aimed at young or new motorcyclists, we'll just take a moment to talk about something that can be the scourge of the 125, and that is your clutch cable. Now, this is a problem that can affect any motorcycle that uses a cabled system clutch, as opposed to a more modern sort of hydraulic clutch or anything like that. Now, I don't know what it is about these 125s that causes your clutch cable to snap more frequently. It could just be smaller engine, less power, more gear changes, so the clutch is in more use. Who knows? Whatever. It's always a great idea to keep your existing clutch cable well lubed. Now, in a pinch, a shot of WD-40 is going to help out, but that doesn't last for that long before it really needs doing again. There are tricks and stuff that you can do with a plastic bag, some tape, and let oil run down it and all that. I'm not doing all that faffery and stupidity. I've found something better. This is liquid lubricant. It's basically a liquid grease. It was actually purchased under the guise of being fishing reel grease, and it's very, very soft. It's just a tickle thicker than oil, but it does just run pretty much anywhere and lingers a lot longer than oil or your spray-in lubricant. And because it is quite thin, with a bit of patience, you can just carefully drop it in from the top, having undone your clutch cable, let it run down the cable, and after some time has elapsed, it'll be ready for some more, and it'll slowly work its way down, and that will extend the life of said clutch cable, because getting stuck in the middle of nowhere with this cable snapped is a pain in the backside, and I have personally had that. This stuff as well, I don't know if it's electronically safe, but it's pretty good to use on any sort of mechanical parts, once again not brakes. Just let that feed in, give it a wiggle. Okay, once you've got plenty of the old greasy stuff in there, let's connect it back up. This little lug here goes into your space there. For those of you that don't know, popping back in, into there, and then you've got to get it in there. And your first thing you're going to find is, oh look, it doesn't fit, it's too short. It will be. Just pull on the cable housing, and that'll actually pull the clutch open down there a little bit. This is naturally easier to do with the smaller bikes. Oh, sit back with the clutch. And in she goes. And then we can set it back up. Now, when you're adjusting your clutch cable here, you don't want it tight. You always want a little play in it, just to make sure you're not riding around with constant pressure on your clutch, because if you are, that's going to make all your clutch plates wear out a heck of a lot faster, and also increase your chances in the higher gears of slipping a clutch. Good advice for everybody there. If you're worried that your clutch is wearing out, it won't slip in the lower gears, it will slip in the higher ones. Everybody thinks if my clutch is worn out, it's going to take longer to pull off in first gear. Not true. It will actually slip and slide far more in your higher gears when you're actually requiring more torque from the engine. Tighten that little spinny thing up there, the adjuster lock. Solid enough, and there we go. Just a few millimeters of free play so that we know we've not got any pressure on that clutch down there. All right then, guys. So as we have just mentioned, on these little bikes, on any bike for that matter, but seemingly more so on these little ones, clutch cable breakages can be a very common, irritating problem. Leave you stuck in the middle of nowhere, waiting for either a breakdown or your friendly father with a trailer to come and get you. This can be avoided. Clutch cables for this bike and most bikes aren't expensive. I think this one, I've got a second cable here that I'm just pre-lubing it, ready for action. And this was about £8 off eBay for a spare clutch cable. And I would recommend anybody who has a cable clutch to carry a spare on their bike. So here's a pro tip for you. Most bikes will have a little place to keep a small stack of tools, but for a lot of bikes, it's probably not large enough to stuff a clutch cable into. And carrying it in a rucksack or otherwise cargo compartment is always a good thing. But what if you go out without your rucksack, or for whatever reason you move it, take it out? Best thing to do with it is to carry it on the bike in a far more sensible fashion. So as I have just pre-lubed this one and left it to make sure that that lube gets all the way down it, what I'm going to do is just use a bit of the old fantastical insulation tape to close the thing shut to keep the weather out of it. Yeah, I'm just going to literally wrap it up with insulation tape. After I've taped it up, just to keep the water out, all I'm going to do is poke it down where the clutch cable is already, right next to the existing cable. To trace it down under its hooks, where it lives. Then, with everybody's favourite fix-it, a couple of cable ties. I'm just going to fasten it to the existing clutch cable. And just one more here to stop it flappeting about. And then I can just trim the flappy bits off. But then when the inevitable happens and your clutch cable does pop on you when you're out and about, instead of needing to pull your brake down or some handy person with a trailer, you can just change your cable on the side of the road and carry on, saving yourself any embarrassment and quite a bit of time. All that for a couple of cable ties and like £8 worth of cable. So there we go, folks. That's pretty much all I need to waffle about on this one today. So until the next time, that's pretty much me done. So get out there, get having fun, get finding cheeky bike fixes. Feel free to let me know. Above all, be safe, and I will catch you on the next one.